Tonight, PDP Board of Trustees members moved to avert an implosion in the party ahead of the 2023 general elections, warns that recent crisis in the party could jeopardize its chances in the polls. Federal government asks striking resident doctors to return to work, says reason for strike are state matters. 10 of 34 local government areas in Katsina State under constant attacks by bandits. Governor Masari raises the alarm, urges military to change strategy. And Iran's new president, Ibrahim Raisi, vows to support diplomatic plans to lift sanctions on his country as he is sworn into office. Plus, business, sports, news from Abuja, and later, international news from our studio in London.
On business news tonight, African Development Bank to launch $500 million innovation program to boost technology and creative industry in Nigeria.
On sports news tonight, Lionel Messi will leave FC Barcelona as the Catalan club are unable to fulfill a new contract that had been agreed with the player.
And from Abuja, federal government says no Nigerian company bidded for the rehabilitation of the Warri and Kaduna refineries awarded to a foreign company at $1.4 billion.
We must put our house in order. That's what the People's Democratic Party's Board of Trustees, BOT, seems to be telling the leadership of the party as he raises concern over the current crisis rocking the party. The BOT is asking members to stop the infighting, which it says could jeopardize the peaceful conduct of the proposed National Congress in December this year. Chairman of the PDP Board of Trustees, Senator Walid Jibrin, noted at an emergency meeting in Abuja that the party must wake up from slumber, fearlessly diagnose its problems and prepare the party for victory in 2023. Meanwhile, the national chairman of the PDP, Prince Uche Secondus, has appealed to members to work together for a peaceful transition of powers to a new national working committee.
It's a well-attended emergency meeting of the PDP Board of Trustees at the party's headquarters in Abuja, with former national officers, including former Senate presidents, in attendance. The meeting is part of efforts to address some of the internal crises rocking the party, including defections of members and the resignation of some principal officers of the party, as well as calls for the sack of the Secondus-led National Working Committee.
Thank you.
In his welcome remarks, the chairman of the Board of Trustees raises concern over how the ongoing crisis in the party could affect its prospects in 2023 if not urgently addressed.
This is our time to come out and deal with these matters, especially the recent one that has just happened within. The deputy national chairman, 7 of them, have resigned.
There has been some sort of cold war within the PDP leadership structure, with some members of the party calling for the resignation of the chairman of the National Working Committee. The party has also lost some of its members to the ruling party, and most recently, 7 principal officers of the party resigned, a situation that reignited calls for the sack of the Secondus-led National Working Committee. The PDP national chairman, who is at the center of the storm, now addresses the gathering. He notes that despite the divergent opinions, the NWC is interested in smooth transition of power at the party's national convention in December.
Issues of this nature must be handled quickly and swiftly, because any dislocation will cause an infraction and will result to several unknown issues that we may come out and we may not be able, but God forbid.
The PDP is expected to elect officers who will lead it into the next general elections during the national convention, tentatively scheduled for December this year. However, many within the party see the recent development as a huge threat to the party's chances in 2023.
Into other stories, the federal government is asking resident doctors to return to work, maintaining that the major issues upon which the strike is based are purely state government affairs. The Minister of Health, Dr. Osagie Ehanire, during a briefing in Abuja, noted that 5 of the issues which concern the federal government are in the process of being implemented. However, the National Association of Resident Doctors insists the federal government cannot direct its members to return to work, having failed to keep its own end of the Memorandum of Agreement that was signed in 2020. Our correspondent, Emperor Simon, has more.
The National Association of Resident Doctors have been on an indefinite industrial action since August the 2nd, 2021, and authorities in the Health Ministry are meeting journalists majorly to explain what they describe as misinformation and disinformation of the public regarding the strike action.
We do not want the public to start thinking.
The Minister of Health begins by asking the striking resident doctors to return to work by Friday, 6th of August 2021.
Striking is not a tool to be used at this time of need, and I want to advise that you go back to work by tomorrow.
They were still appealing to the doctors to go back to the negotiating table.
Key among the reasons the resident doctors are on strike are delays in the disbursement of medical residency training funds, non-payment of the salaries of house officers, non-payment of the national minimum wage consequential adjustment to resident doctors, abolishment of bench fee for outside postings, poor response of most state governments in domesticating the Medical Residency Training Act of 2017, and health insurance issues. However, the Minister of Health says only 5 of the issues affect the federal government. At the moment, Nigeria has over 176,000 cases of COVID-19, as 2,167 deaths have been recorded from the virus. The government is concerned about the effect the strike action will have on its efforts to tackle the situation, especially as the cases of the Delta variant increase.
We are already receiving reports that persons who are appearing with symptoms that look like COVID-19 and going to hospital are being rejected because they are told that the resident doctors are on strike. This is dangerous.
Reacting, President of the National Association of Resident Doctors in a Zoom interview says the federal government failed to keep its promises and so has no justification to ask the striking resident doctors to return to work.
A father will not tell his son to go back to work when you have not done what you are supposed to do. An MOA was signed on the 31st of March, and addendum to that was done on the 9th of April for basic things meant mostly for federal institutions, not for states.
It's the 3rd time the resident doctors are going on strike in 2021 to press home their demands, and the attending consequences of the industrial action on the health sector in Nigeria is better imagined. Emperor Simon, Channels Television News.
The World Health Organization has donated 26 ventilators and 3,560 fingertip oxygen pulse oximeters to Nigeria. This gesture is to help in strengthening the country's capacity in the management of COVID-19. The country representative of WHO, Dr. Walter Mulombo, made a symbolic presentation of the items to the Minister of Health, Dr. Osagie Ehanire, in Abuja. According to Dr. Mulombo, the move is part of WHO's continued support to Nigeria in the fight against COVID-19, especially in the face of a 3rd wave due to the Delta variant. On his part, the Minister of Health commends WHO for the intervention and assures that the items will be distributed judiciously. And 7 states in the country are to receive $50 to $60 million each of the $700 million funding from the World Bank for specific water schemes. The federal government is set to begin disbursement of the funds to the beneficiaries Imo, Delta, Katsina, Ekiti, Plateau, Kaduna and Bauchi states to improve access to basic sanitation services. The minister, who decried lack of cooperation from states, further disclosed that the federal government will no longer provide full funding for water supply schemes to states. Our State House correspondent, Gloria Mizoke, reports.
The Minister of Water Resources, who was guest at the 17th ministerial briefing at the State House, highlights a partnership for expanded water supply, sanitation and hygiene (PWASH) among states. He reminds that a $700 million funding from the World Bank is clearly part of strategy to address the inadequate provision of water infrastructure in the country. Already, 7 states have indicated willingness to receive the loans.
So far, for information, there are Imo, Katsina, Delta, Plateau, Kaduna, Ekiti, and Bauchi. Those are the first-tier states that will have the maybe 50, 60 million. And mind you, it's optional because these loans are not federal government loans. The federal government is guaranteeing the loan, but it's going to the states. And it's the states that will pay back this loan.
He makes the emphasis that with counterpart funding from states, provision of 100% water supply is possible, particularly with the completion of 458 water supply schemes and 37 dams and reservoir projects, some of which were abandoned since 1987.
I know of 2 places where the federal government built the dam and the treatment plant, and the states didn't use them. And I know a scheme that we commissioned, 6 billion naira. So after completion, we handed over to the state government. A year after, we went back. It was not in use. It was for 13 communities, 120,000 people. The state government locked it. We asked why. They said they can't afford 2-3 million naira a month. And that is why we said the federal government is no longer going to be a Father Christmas, just doing these projects and handing over to them. We have to see their own commitment as well.
The Water Resources Bill is another area the minister tries to address. For him, there is no controversy about the bill, only a deliberate ploy by some persons to misinform Nigerians about the merits of the bill.
The law is clear. If you read the bill, it is very clear. If you want to drill a borehole in your house, you are free to do so. And the other thing, I talked about WASH fund. That's also a provision in that bill. The WASH fund, because states are finding it difficult to meet their budgetary obligations, we created a WASH fund to have a fund by law, just like you have ecological funds, so that state governments can go and borrow money and go and do projects to improve their water supply.
The federal government makes no bones about the intention to regulate the water sector, particularly with the backing of governors to further advance investment in the sector. From the presidential villa, Gloria Umezuke, Channels Television News.
And to the northeast, where Governor of Borno State, Babagana Zulum, has ordered an investigation into the clash between the Borno Geographical Information System Task Force and the EYN church members in Maiduguri. The governor, who had earlier condemned the incident in a statement this evening, met with the leadership of the Christian Association of Nigeria in the state and also commiserated with families of the person who died and those injured in the incident, while pledging that the government will bear the cost of their treatment. One person had been killed while 5 others sustained injuries in the Moju Ganari area of Maiduguri, the Borno state capital, when some members of the Civilian Joint Task Force personnel tried to enforce a demolition order by the Borno Geographic Information Service, BOGIS. Eyewitnesses say the BOGIS officials came to the area with a heavy-duty vehicle with instructions to demolish a local church, a move that was resisted by members of the church. Some members who are mostly residents in the community also tried to record with their phones, but were stopped by the CJTF personnel before opening fire.
The outcome shall be forwarded to my office for immediate action. And therefore, I'm calling upon the Christian Association of Nigeria, Maiduguri, Borno State Branch, to remain calm and law-abiding, and be rest assured that we we shall do everything possible to do justice to the matter.
In part two, after the break, one person dead as flood ravages communities in Taraba State after heavy downpour. Please stay with us. Welcome back. If you just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 live on Channels Television Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. PDP Board of Trustees members moved to avert an implosion in the party ahead of the 2023 general elections, warns that recent crisis in the party could jeopardize its chances in the polls. Federal government are striking resident doctors to return to work, says reasons for strike are state matters. 10 of 34 local government areas in Katsina State under constant attacks by bandits. Governor Masari raises the alarm, urges military to change strategy. And Iran's new president, Ibrahim Raisi, vows to support diplomatic plans to lift sanctions on his country as he is sworn into office. And at least one person is feared killed today during an armed robbery attack on two commercial banks in Ire area of Osun State. Channels Television gathers that the yet-to-be-identified victim was hit by a stray bullet. According to an eyewitness, the robbers stormed the two banks at about 3:50 p.m. in Borikwe local government area and escaped through Adat town afterwards. Confirming the incident, the Osun State Police Command spokesperson explains that the tactical team are in pursuit of the armed robbers. Meanwhile, police operatives of B Division in Ewet Housing have arrested a young lady, Loretta Anoff, alleged to have stabbed her boyfriend to death, making away with his vehicle a huge sum of money in Uyo, the state capital. According to a statement by the police public relations officer, the suspect was arrested at the verge of changing the ownership of the victim's vehicle and the recovery of about 2.5 million naira. The Commissioner of Police has ordered an immediate transfer of the case to the state's Criminal Investigation Department for discreet investigation. And it was a tough day for residents of Jalingo, the Taraba State capital today, as houses, business premises and farmlands were submerged by floods. The heavy downpour, which lasted several hours and blocked drainage systems, is believed to have triggered the flood. This comes barely 1 month after the previous flooding took place in July this year.
For the second time in a month, flood has wreaked havoc on residents of Sabongiri, Nukai, Mayugoi and Ruby communities, all in Jalingo axis in the Taraba State capital. Houses, business premises, farmlands as well as vehicles are not spared in the movement of this body of water. This bridge connecting some communities around the state capital has cracked due to the force. While some residents are trying to salvage what's left of their property, others watch helplessly as their household items are stolen by others taking advantage of the menace.
All of a sudden we were here, the place was just flooded. So in between there was a car here that the water moved. Before you know, fences started falling. Even the whole fence of my house was down. Then all of a sudden, some of the things that we were not able to get because of the flood, we just saw guys from nowhere entering the water to pick them up. And when you want to claim your property, they tell you that it's their own. They came, they followed it from elsewhere to pick them.
Our government are not helping matters. They need to sensitize people on how to settle. Yes. Sometimes they need to organize, even if it's a seminar or even if it's an awareness program, to create awareness, tell people this is water channel. Educate them. You don't need to settle here because floods may still come and affect you.
While on the tour of the affected communities, Governor Darius Ishaku condoles with the family of a 17-year-old boy who lost his life due to the incident and also outlines what needs to be done to reduce the impact on the people.
We'll send them food and some blankets night and so forth to be able to cushion the suffering of the families. And that is why I decided to come to see for myself. But the major problem is drainage. Reduced drainage, because the volume of water that is coming is far more than the drainage provided, which is worsened by the dirt that they put in the culverts. This is a major problem. We are going to ask the urban development to provide more buckets, dumping waste buckets to all over across this place that you see, so that children can dump their waste there and not inside the drainage.
For now, those affected are doing everything within their means to get out of harm's way.
Governor Samuel Ortom of Benue State is not happy with leaders, some leaders, as well as his colleagues, for what he considers as their silence over security issues, especially kidnappings of students across the country. The governor made the call while receiving the APC Benue Northeast senatorial candidate and a financier of the party, Mrs. Mimi Adzape, as well as leaders from 5 political wards from Kwande local government into the People's Democratic Party in Benue State. He also wants internally displaced persons to be better protected.
Over 1.5 million internally displaced persons sacked from their ancestral homes in 2018 continue to languish in IDP camps across Benue State. 4 years after, they are yet to be resettled, and this does not go down well with some members of the ruling All Progressives Congress. On July the 17th, 2021, the party's candidate for the 2019 senatorial election for Benue Northeast visited the Abagana camp with relief materials and demands that her party provides an enabling environment for the IDPs to return to.
I just came here to make a statement, to beg, to ask for assistance from the federal government to relocate my family, to relocate my mothers, my fathers, my brothers and sisters back to their home.
This call she made was not well received by her party, which announced her suspension from its fold. This does not deter Mrs. Adzape, who reiterates the call when she meets the state governor, Samuel Ortom.
Politics is about you. It is not about me. It is not about the governor or the appointees. And so your plight is my plight. That is why I decided to move.
Reacting to the situation, Governor Ortom criticized the country for keeping quiet when lives are being lost daily.
Martin Luther King Jr. said, those people who keep quiet in the times of adversity, without saying anything, they are worse than those people who are perpetrating it.
Benue State has had its fair share of violent clashes with incessant attacks on not just regular communities, but also on IDP camps. And the state governor, Samuel Ortom, continues to cry out to the federal government for assistance to restore peace and security in the state.
And to Katsina State, where the governor, Aminu Masari, is challenging the Nigerian army to re-strategize so as to bring banditry in the state under control, saying that 10 of the 34 local government areas are under constant attack by bandits. According to him, the era of people depending on the number of men and women in uniform has passed, as emphasis is more now on deployment of technology. The governor was speaking when he received the Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Farouk Yahya, on a courtesy call at the government house in the state.
We have moved into the era of technology. With technology, you can fight your wars with minimum number of personnel. So I hope that technology will be deployed, properly deployed, so that we'll be able to really bring these banditry activities under control. We are not deceiving ourselves that we will eliminate criminality. It has never been done before. cannot be done today, neither can it be done tomorrow. But we can bring it under control in such a way that it does not disturb the way of life of people. As we are seeing today, 10 out of 34 local governments are under severe attack daily. So with that in mind, there is no way we can sleep. So General, we are not in a very comfortable position, but we thank God. Definitely there is improvement. But we want the situation to be brought under control with the collective support, effort, work of each and every one of us.
Meanwhile, the army chief told the governor that his visit was to meet and interact with the troops on ground. He pleaded with the governor not to relent in his efforts in supporting the military personnel operating in the state.
In essence, that what brought me to appreciate and thank you. The troops have always briefed, whether we are here or not, of the tremendous support they are getting from you in terms of logistics, support, equipment, and probably particularly guidance. Having been the chief security officer here who knows it all, also who feel the pinch, I want to most sincerely appreciate and thank you for all that, and to request Your Excellency not to rest, not to relent in His hours, but to continue to support us. What we have discussed in the office before coming here was very assuring, because Excellency, not only now, even before when I was before Macho and Mr. Mohammed severally in Pascali and other places, for someone to appreciate and understand also the challenges, even though they are not unsurmountable.
When the news at 10 returns, Lagos State House of Assembly approves 50% reduction in the pension of former governors of the state, plus African Development Bank to launch $500 million innovation program to boost technology and creative industry in Nigeria. That's on Business News. Do join us again. And the Lagos State House of Assembly has approved the report of its committee, which recommended the reduction of pensions to former governors and other affected officials by 50%. The committee also expunged the provision of houses in Abuja and Lagos for former governors as stipulated in an earlier law operated by the state. The report further showed a reduction in the number of vehicles to be made available to former governors and their deputies. While some of the lawmakers had suggested an upward review of the pension for the affected public office holders by 75%, the House resolved to leave it at 50%. And the Chief Judge of Lagos State, Justice Kazim Alogba, has sworn in a 10-member election petition panel to hear and determine disputes arising from the local government elections held on Saturday in the state, the 24th of July. The members were sworn in the presence of the administrative judges and magistrates of the courts, as well as other court staff. They were divided into two panels of 5 members each, who were sworn in pursuant to the provisions of Section 1 of the Local Government Election Tribunal Law of Lagos 2015. With both panels headed by newly retired judges of the state judiciary, Justice Babatunde Candidate Johnson heads Panel 1, which will sit at the premises of the Lagos State High Court in Ikeja to hear petitions from local government areas on the mainland, while Panel 2, headed by Justice Adeniyi Onigbanjo, will sit at the former Federal High Court complex, Alausa, to hear petitions from local government areas on the island. After inaugurating the panels, the Chief Judge reminded the members to be transparent and honest in discharging their duties. And off to Abuja we go. Here's Linda Akibe with more stories. Hi, Linda.
Hello, Millicent. The whole idea of local content policy is to give Nigerian companies an opportunity to operate in the oil and gas industry. But sadly, the Minister of State for Petroleum, Mr. Timipri Silva, today revealed that no Nigerian company bidded for the contract on the rehabilitation of the country's refineries, which has just been re-awarded by the federal government to foreign companies at a cost of $1.4 billion. Mr. Silva was speaking earlier on our political program, Politics Today.
I will agree with you that the government is not the best manager of refineries. And that's why this time we are actually going to have a professional manager to manage refineries. We're not going to manage the refineries at all. I've said that for the opt-in time. But we believe that the refineries, we should get the refineries back to life before we decide on the option of whether we are going to privatize or sell off the refineries.
Who are the people? Which companies are getting what?
Port Harcourt Refinery, the contractor for Port Harcourt Refinery Rehabilitation is called Tecnimont. It's an Italian company in partnership with DEU. That's the consortium. Warri Refinery is Saipem. And Kaduna Refinery is also Saipem. So they are different. It's a different contractor for Port Harcourt, but the same contractor for Warri and Port Harcourt because it's a package. So we gave it to them. And of course, they had the option. All contractors had the option of choosing one refinery or the two. But all the contractors requested for that package, which contained the two refineries. So we gave it to them as one.
Was there a bidding process?
It was a bidding process. It came from 30 interested companies, came down to to 5 companies pre-qualified, and then, of course, Saipem won.
Was there any Nigerian companies on that bidding process?
No, there was no Nigerian company on renewables. What we are telling the rest of the world is that we cannot join that race to renewables now. If you tell me, in the definition of renewables, you tell me that nuclear energy is a renewable fuel, while gas is not, I disagree with you. So what we are saying is, yes, the West has defined renewables. They are saying they want to move to renewables. That they must also allow us, because we have a lot of gas resources, we have a lot of petroleum resources generally, and we want to be able to at least achieve our energy-based load as well. That means we want to also be able to provide electricity to all our citizens based on what we have. Then we will join that conversation.
The issue of subsidy, you've mentioned it. The whole nation know that that is not the right thing to do. Don't you have the muscle to stop paying subsidy?
So what we are saying is, look, before we do this, we need to put some structures in place so that the impact on the people will be minimized. So what we are trying to do is to try to create an alternative which is cheaper, which is more affordable. So that structure is being put in place. Well, I will not give you a date now. The Vice President is actually leading an effort, and we're working out the details. And very soon, especially with the PIB passed, we will come out and we'll tell Nigerians what date subsidy will kick in.
Education in Kwara State faces many challenges, especially in the area of poor funding, irregular promotion, inadequate infrastructure, dearth of manpower, and appalling learning conditions. For this reason, the state government is organizing an Education Futures Summit with experts in the education sector to prefer solutions to the challenges. The state governor says his administration is fully prepared to tackle the challenge head-on.
For several years, the education sector in Kwara State has suffered neglect, especially in the area of infrastructure, low morale of teachers, and insufficient funding, just to name a few. That's why the administration of Governor Abdul Rahman Abdul Razak is organizing an Education Futures Summit tagged Securing and Investing in the Next Generation. Stakeholders in the education sector from across the country are here to support the state government in its effort to revamp the sector.
I would like to assure you all that your honest and sincere contributions will go a long way in giving education a new leap in Kwara State.
The representative of the World Bank and an aide to President Muhammadu Buhari on education laments the neglect that the sector has suffered at all levels and they proffer solutions.
We need partnerships. We need to build bridges between the state actors and the non-state actors. The non-state actors, the civil society, the non-governmental, the foundations, and everybody needs to come on board.
Can't solve them with the way we are thinking. We have to change it. So if we want to reimagine education in Kwara, and to do that, the government is very critical. It means that we must think in a different way.
The state governor says his administration has executed investments in infrastructure, recruitment of qualified teachers, and reinvigoration of the monitoring system in the schools since 2019, and that's in a bid to revive basic education in the state.
At this Kwara Education Future Summit, we will analyze the current state of education in Kwara State and develop action plans to build a new generation who can hold their own anywhere in the world. Already, we're building a legal framework to support our efforts. We now have a bill for a law to establish Kwara State Education Trust Fund.
After all is said and done, action taken after the summit will determine the future of education in Kwara State.
The president of the ECOWAS Commission, Mr. Jean-Claude Bro, has announced plans by the Commission to commence the implementation of the region's socio-economic agenda, tagged ECOWAS Vision 2050 by December 31st, 2021. Speaking at a meeting organized for members of the Permanent Representatives Committee of the body in Abuja, the ECOWAS chief explains that the new initiative will serve as a platform for the region's socio-economic integration and provide inclusion for all, while removing all forms of impediments to trade and technology transfer among its member states.
Thank you very much, Madam.
Members of the Permanent Representatives Committee and ECOWAS resident representatives converge here to discuss issues of economic diversification, transportation, infrastructure, and economic ties amongst member countries.
It is a pleasure to be here.
They're seeking ways to improve the living conditions of people in West Africa. That's why they're considering a draft of the region's Vision 2050 agenda to drive the process.
The meeting with you today get the ball rolling for the validation process, leading to the presentation of Vision 2050 to the authority of ECOWAS Head of State and Government for endorsement in December 2021. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Vision 2050 seeks to build on the accomplishment of Vision 2020, which has set a strong foundation for the movement from an ECOWAS of state to an ECOWAS of people.
Before now, the body has been considering a series of strategies to improve the people's lives, including the Vision 2020, which experts say has achieved some level of success despite the current state of insecurity in the sub-region. Members of the ECOWAS region and development partners list areas of priority which the new policy must focus on.
The discussions at this two-day meeting must be all-encompassing, as well as prefer potential solutions to the challenges confronting the region. All ideas expressed must be taken on board, as this will ensure that the final vision is strategic and incorporates a realistic time frame for all the programs and projects that the community intends to implement.
The GSZ is confident that the future Vision 2050 could be a watershed for the region if the inclusion and commitment of the development phases remain high for all the stakeholders for the next steps.
For 2 days, these representatives drawn from the ECOWAS region will come up with strategies to change the narrative in the socio-economic development of its people. That, if well implemented, will be a game changer for the West African sub-region.
And that's all from Abuja. Back to you, Millicent.
Thanks, Linda. And the U.S. Consul General in Nigeria, Claire Pierangelo, has conveyed the concerns of the U.S. government about the freedom of press in Nigeria. Speaking at a forum held in Lagos to discuss press freedom, freedom of expression and civic space, the U.S. Consul General says the Biden-Harris administration is committed to putting human rights at the heart of their foreign policy. She goes on to say that some concerns remain about the freedom of journalists to do their job in Nigeria, noting that when legislation is introduced, it could have significant consequences for the freedom of the press.
The Nigerian government's ongoing suspension of Twitter and the stated intent to reintroduce registration requirements for other social media platforms is deeply worrisome to us and to others around the world. Banning or significantly restricting social media, including under threat of prosecution, undermines Nigerians' human rights and fundamental freedoms. We are encouraged by the meetings between Twitter and Government Technical Committee last week aimed at resolving suspension, and we wish the best in this negotiation that the government and Twitter can come to an agreement that preserves the rights of Nigerian citizens to their freedom of expression. So in view of these recent developments, you, reporters, editors, media executives, and civil society representatives, you must remain vigilant to protect the right of freedom of expression and press freedom. To fulfill its highest civic purpose, the press must be both independent and unbiased. And without independence, a media outlet functions as a public relations mouthpiece for the government and other powerful interests. And as I said, this is something that even democracies such as the United States struggle with every day. We're going to be 250 years old in a couple of years. And it's our first thing we did was create the First Amendment to the Constitution, and 250 years later, we are still working at it. So it is always a work in progress. In the same breath, history is full of cautionary tales showing that when governments try to limit citizens' right to talk about certain topics, important conversations are pushed to the shadows, allowing individuals to, allowing individuals to express their opinions. No matter how much the government and other citizens may disagree with them.
Let's bring you some business news now. Here's Melinda Kilami.
Many thanks, Millicent. Welcome to Business News. The federal government is working with the African Development Bank to launch a $500 million innovation program targeted at boosting technology and creative sectors of the Nigerian economy. Professor Yemi Oshibajo made this known today at a webinar organized by the Joint Planning Board and the National Council on Development Planning. According to the Vice President, sustainable economic growth is possible in the country if issues such as security, climate change and education are addressed with a sense of urgency. He asked state governments to take proactive steps and more interest in the Africa Free Trade Agreement due to its implications and opportunities. As part of efforts to improve the use of domestic gas, the Department of Petroleum Resources has assured foreign investors of its commitment and guidance to facilitate their businesses. The DPR director, Mr. Saki Anwalu, made this known during a meeting with an Iranian delegation seeking to invest in gas development. He adds that Nigeria is open for business as the country aims to optimize alternative energy sources. And talking about energy sources, let's check out those oil prices. They rose towards $71 a barrel today on rising Middle East tensions, while fresh movement restrictions to counter a surge in COVID-19 cases threaten demand. Brent crude oil futures rose by 1.26% to $71.25 per barrel after dipping earlier below $70 for the first time since July the 21st. U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude futures rose 1.54% to $69.19 per barrel. That was about 9:22 p.m. local time. Both benchmarks fell by more than $2 a barrel on Wednesday, and that puts the benchmarks on track for their lowest since July the 20th. The equities market closed on a negative note today as the all-share index fell by 0.32%, wiping off yesterday's gains. Laddie Williams tells us more.
Just like that, the bear comes in and wrecks the party. The all-share index dips 0.32%, but the equity cap remains above the 20 trillion mark. Take a look at the activity chart there. 139.78 million units valued at 1.4 billion naira exchange hands in 3,655 deals. Corn oil led the gainers counter up 10%, closing at 20 naira 35 kobo, followed closely by Chi PLC and Sovereign Insurance. Over to the losers counter now. Ardova led that counter down 6.25%, closing at 15 naira per share. Consumer goods led the sectoral counter up 0.26%. Also, industrial and insurance were in the green. Meanwhile, others were in the negative. Well, we have one more trading session. We'll see if the bull can make a return. And that's the stock market report. Thank you for watching. I'm Ladi Williams. It's back to you.
Many thanks, Ladi. Well, it's different strokes as major U.S. equity indexes rose on Thursday and the S&P 500 set a new record high, closing as energy and travel stocks bounced back ahead of a key labor market report. Let's take a look at those numbers. That's Business News. It's back to you, Millicent.
Thank you, Melinda. Iran's new president, Ibrahim Raisi, has been sworn into office following his election victory in June. After this inauguration, Mr. Raisi says that he would support any diplomatic plans to lift sanctions. Let's head over to our London studios where Simon Pusey has more news in and around the world in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the Channel Studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. Myanmar's ambassador to the United Nations has alerted the agency to a reported massacre by the military regime. Kior Motun sent a letter to the UN Secretary-General saying 40 bodies had been found in an area of northwestern Myanmar in July. He also alleged that soldiers tortured and killed 16 men in a village. Myanmar has been in turmoil since the army removed the civilian leadership on February the 1st, launching a crackdown on dissent that has killed more than 900 people so far. Israeli fighter jets have launched air raids on neighbouring Lebanon following a second day of rocket fire from across the border. The military said that jets struck the launch sites from which rockets had been fired over the previous day, as well as an additional target used to attack Israel in the past. 3 rockets were fired from Lebanon into Israeli territory on Wednesday, triggering multiple bushfires. The Mexican government has sued several weapons manufacturers in a US court, accusing them of fueling bloodshed through reckless business practices. The lawsuit alleges that the companies knew they were contributing to illegal arms trafficking, which had been linked to many deaths. Officials say Mexico is seeking as much as $10 billion in compensation. A van overloaded with 30 people, many of them believed to be illegal immigrants, has crashed in southern Texas, killing 10 occupants and critically injuring many of the others. US authorities said the vehicle was driving at high speed when it tried to veer off a highway and hit a metal pole and a stop sign in the city of Encino. The driver and 9 passengers were killed in the impact. The remaining 20 passengers were taken to local hospitals where some of them were listed in critical condition. The crash took place several miles from the US Border Patrol checkpoint. Australia's Prime Minister has announced a reparations fund for some members of its Indigenous population who were forcibly removed from families.
The ultimate test of our efforts is that every Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander boy or girl can grow up with the same opportunities.
Scott Morrison said that Australia will create a $280 million reparations fund after 800 survivors filed a class action lawsuit against the federal government, covering a period ranging from 1910 to the 1970s. More than 100,000 Aboriginal children were removed from their families and communities during those years. At least 150 houses have been destroyed by a raging fire that surrounded a monastery and a dozen villages on the Greek island of Evia. The huge flames leaping up from the forest could be seen from the sea. Firefighters said it was a difficult blaze to control on an island of rolling hills with little visibility. Meanwhile, firefighters were also continuing to battle a blaze near Athens, with images showing the Pantheon engulfed in smoke. There are currently over 100 active fires burning in the country. Special forces of Russia and Uzbekistan have been conducting drills near the Afghan border amid the worsening situation in the country. Russia said 1,500 Russian and Uzbek troops would take part in the 5-day exercises that began at a military site in Uzbekistan. Security has rapidly deteriorated in Afghanistan as the United States withdraws its troops. Moscow fears that it could destabilize its southern defensive flank and push refugees into its Central Asian backyard. More than 150 lorries carrying humanitarian aid have arrived in Ethiopia's conflict-hit northern Tigray region.
4, 5.
The UN World Food Programme said that while this was great progress, more than 100 lorries are needed every day in order to reach the millions that are in dire need. The agency said that around 400,000 people are living in famine conditions in Tigray, and more than 90% of the population needs emergency food aid. And finally, 3 Tunisian brothers that always loved cars but could not afford one have decided to hand-build their own. The 3 young men live in a rural area east of the capital Tunis, known for its sandy forests and rough terrain, so they created a car that could thrive on narrow and uneven roads. Resembling a buggy, the light green painted vehicle has been a success. The brothers hope to one day start a factory where they can mass produce the vehicle themselves. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to Millicent in Lagos.
Many thanks, Simon. Time now for some sports news. FC Barcelona say Lionel Messi, their talisman, will not be staying at the club because of financial and structural obstacles. Messi has been a free agent since July the 1st when his contract expired. He agreed a new deal which on reduced wages with the club 2 weeks later, but it was dependent on Barca selling players to afford his salary. Both parties deeply regret that the wishes of the player and the club will ultimately not be fulfilled. The ambassador representing Nigeria in Japan, His Excellency Abubakar Husseini, earlier today hosted Team Nigeria at the Nigerian Embassy in Tokyo, Japan. Ambassador Husseini welcomed the remaining athletes and officials in the Nigeria camp to Japan and thanked them for the good work and quality representation they have given the Federal Republic of Nigeria, especially the medalists who made the country proud during the Olympics 2020. China remain at the top of the medals table after the end of sporting action on day 15 of the Olympic Games. Now they lead the medals table with 34 gold, 24 silver and 16 bronze medals, while the US are still on the second spot with 29 gold, 35 silver and 27 bronze. Sitting in third is the host Japan with 22 gold, 10 silver and 14 bronze medals. That sports news is back to you, Millicent.
Main thanks, Ayotunde. And the main news again. Members of the PDP Board of Trustees today moved to avert an implosion in the party ahead of the 2023 general elections, warning that recent crisis in the party could jeopardize its chances in the polls. Also today, the federal government are striking resident doctors to return to work, saying reasons for the strike are state matters, but the president of the National Association of Resident Doctors rejected the call. That's news at 10 tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm Millicent Morgan. Have a good night. Stay safe.